Hi, thanks for watching Parks in Your Pocket. My name is Dave, and today I wanted to share some more tips for your visit to Universal Orlando. Now, these tips will work for either Universal Studios or Islands of Adventure. They're just kind of general tips, and one of them might actually mean that you need to have a park hopper. No matter which one that you're interested in visiting, this video is for you. Let's get into the tips. So my first tip is to download the Universal Orlando app. Okay, so what this will do is it'll let you do things like see all the wait times for all the rides, figure out where all the food locations are, get in virtual lines so that you don't have to wait through the queue. You can even order food ahead so you don't have to wait in line. So there's a lot that it can do, and it can do a lot for you before you visit the parks. So don't wait until you're here to actually download the app. Download the app well ahead of time, get familiar with it, and you can even check the wait times like a week ahead of time to kind of get a gauge for how popular things are and how much time you're going to spend in line, and whether you think it'll be worth it to get like the Express Pass or something. Now, a week ahead of time isn't always going to be 100% accurate, but at least give you a good idea if it's not a holiday weekend or something as to how long the wait times are. It's a very, very useful app. I use it every single time I come into the parks, but I would recommend that you bring a battery charger because it can catch you up your battery if you're out here all day. And if you have a battery charger and you can plug your phone in while it's in your bag or while it's in a locker when you're on a ride, that's going to be the best bet so that you don't have a dead phone by the end of the day. Tip number 2 is you should probably buy an Express Pass, but don't buy it ahead of time. Okay? Get into the parks and see how busy it is here, because if there's only a 10-minute wait on everything, an Express Pass isn't really worth it. But you can kind of expect the Express Pass to cut your wait times down to about a third of what they would be if you didn't have the Express Pass. So if the queue is an hour long, you can expect to wait 20 minutes in the Express line, which is a pretty good deal when you think that it's unlimited. Unlike Disney, which is kind of a three fast pass system, this one is an upcharge. You pay more for it, but you have unlimited rides and you can keep riding the same ride over and over again without having to worry about booking a fast pass. You just go through the Express line. Definitely worth it, but again, don't purchase it ahead of time. Unless you're staying at the resort here. If you're staying at Universal Orlando Resort in one of the hotels here, you actually get a Express Pass for your entire party for free. So that's definitely another perk to staying here on property. So one thing to keep in mind for us big guys is you can always ask at the front of the queue whether the ride has a modified seat. Like for instance, I didn't know that Jimmy Fallon, the Jimmy Fallon ride here had a modified seat until I just now went up and asked, okay? So not every ride is going to have a modified seat, but if you're really worried about it, you don't want to spend a lot of time in the queue only to not be able to fit, you might ask and see if there's a modified seat at the end of the queue so that when you get to the ride, you can tell them you want a modified seat and they can put you in a bigger seat for us big and tall guys. Tip number 4 is if you're a Harry Potter aficionado, and come on, who isn't? And you want to ride the Hogwarts Express, you're going to need to have a park hopper pass to be able to do it, but there's actually a tip for big guys when riding the Hogwarts Express to try and make sure that everybody else in the car has the best experience possible. A quick tip if you're riding the Hogwarts Express is if it's really, really hot outside, the entire queue is air conditioned. So if there's a long wait and you feel like you just want to kind of cool off a little bit, it can kind of be an added benefit of jumping on the Hogwarts Express. Just because you get to cool off, you get to dry off a little bit. There's even a snack stand in the middle of the queue if it's a long queue. So I don't know, it's worth it for the changing of the parks, but it does cost extra. So that's kind of a bummer to be able to experience this. I think you can, oh no, I don't think you can actually experience the queue unless you have the park hopper though, just because they check your ticket right at the door. So the tip for riding Hogwarts, the Hogwarts Express, is if you're a big guy, you want to sit closer to the window on the far side of the car just because if you're a big guy and there's little kids in the car with you, you might block some of the cool effects that are gonna happen on the door of the cabin. So just, I don't want to spoil it, but just probably don't want to sit directly against the door of the cabin because there might be some stuff you can't see. Tip number 5 is, of course, stay hydrated, but you can get free water at pretty much any food service location. So there's no reason not to get water and stay hydrated, except for that the water here in Florida can actually have a little bit of a weird taste to it, like a little bit of a sulfur taste. And so some people don't like drinking it, or they get dehydrated because they don't want to pay a lot for pop. But you can get free water, and if you bring some of these like little fruit flavor packets for water, or these little fruit squirty things, you can flavor the water. And not have to taste the sulfur anymore. Definitely a good idea if you're worried about not liking the flavor of the water here in Florida. It's like 10 a.m. I'm already drenched. So definitely want to stay hydrated. Also, another thing, I always carry around one of these vacuum bottles, and I'll also fill this up with water and ice as soon as I get into the parks. And they're happy to fill it up for me at any of the food services that have a soda fountain. Then I'll hit it with the fruit punch and flavor my water too. For me, if I am really thirsty, it doesn't matter what the water tastes like. I'm just going to drink it. But a lot of people do have this problem, so if you think you might be one of them, definitely bring some water flavor with you so that you can put up with the sulfur taste if you want to save a lot of money. If you're not so worried about saving money, you can buy a freestyle cup that you can refill pretty much everywhere. It's like $15, $16, so I never get it. But if you buy it once, it's good for the entire day at all the parks, and you can refill it as many times as you want to, but it's only good for one day. If you want it for another day, you can bring your old cup in and recharge it for $8 a day. Don't hold me to those prices. Those prices change all the time. But for me, having the water flavor enhancer is just the way to go. It's so much cheaper, and it's just as good in my opinion. So tip number 6 is really think hard about what you're wearing when you go to the parks. For me personally, I can get chafed when it's really hot and I get really sweaty, or I go and ride water rides. So anytime that I think I might have those troubles, I actually have spandex bike shorts that I wear underneath of my regular shorts, just so that I don't get chafed. And also, they help me fit into rides every once in a while. I can slide in there a little bit easier because these are a little bit smaller than my normal size. So they are kind of constricting and kind of pull me in a little bit. If I'm really concerned about trying to ride a ride, or if there's a long line, like you saw these shorts on the Hagrid's video. I was trying very hard to fit on that ride, but even with these, I wasn't able to do it. So they're not a magic bullet, but they do help, and they make sure that I don't get chafed. Another thing to think about is your shoes. I know everybody says to wear comfortable shoes when you come to a theme park, but most of the time I need to think about how thick the sole of that shoe is. If that shoe has 1.5 inches of padding on the bottom of it, that's adding 1.5 inches of height to my knee, and my knee can force me to not be able to ride a ride. So I usually wear like flip-flops or something really thin, or like these beach shoes are pretty good. Now, I do get blisters from time to time just because I'm not wearing extremely soft and comfortable shoes, but I'm able to fit on more rides because my knees are not holding me back. So just keep that in mind. Definitely think about what you're wearing when you come to the parks, because you don't want it to ruin your day. Just in case anybody's interested, I'll definitely link to those bike shorts in the description below if you're interested in picking up a pair for yourself. Tip number 7, so don't just worry about what you're wearing on your person when you come to the parks. Worry about what you bring with you. So the bag that you bring should definitely be able to carry everything that you need, But you don't want to bring one that's just enormous, because several of these rides have lockers where you have to put your stuff away before you can ride. If you have an enormous bag, you're just not going to be able to fit it in any of these free lockers, which are pretty small, really. I mean, they're like maybe 6 inches tall, and that's the outside door. So if you have an enormous bag, you might have a little bit of trouble fitting it in there. This is the bag that I use. And right now it's a little bit full, but I can rearrange everything when I put it into one of these free lockers and get it to fit. It takes a little bit of work, but this bag is just about the right size to be able to carry as much as you possibly can into the parks. If you have a bag that's too big, there is an option. You can pay $2 to buy one of these big lockers over here, but they are very limited, and they are an upcharge. Several rides have them, but not every single one that has lockers, but most of them do. They used to be free, but they changed the price on them here recently. So yeah. But if you need to use one of the big lockers, it's $2 every time you want to ride a ride. So it's definitely worth it to get a bag that is the right size to be able to fit in those free lockers. And I'll link in the description below to the bag that I have. Tip number 9, if you're a Harry Potter fan, all of the Harry Potter themed rides, except for Flight of the Hippogriff, which really wasn't a Harry Potter themed ride when it was first created, have tester seats out front that you can try and see if you're too big. Make sure that you get rid of everything that's in your pockets before you try the tester seat, because you don't want to have your wallet in your pocket and then that stop you from riding. You want to make sure that you're as narrow as you can be for these rides, because they are definitely not big and tall friendly. And if you can't fit in these rides test seats, some of the older rides you might be able to fit on the ride. There's a little bit more wiggle room on the actual ride vehicles, just because they've been bent and put through a lot of torture over the years. Again, if you try these test seats and you're not able to fit and you get a red light on the test seat, you can still go through the queue and experience all the Harry Potter theming that's in the queue. These queues are pretty amazing. They have things like the Sorting Hat and magical creatures and Gringotts Bank, all the goblins at Gringotts Bank. It's definitely worth seeing, even if you can't ride the ride. But ask at the front of the queue if you can go through either the single rider line or the express line, so you don't have to wait around for a long time. But make sure to ask if the express line or single rider line goes through the really pretty queue areas, because some rides like Fast and the Furious, which of course isn't a Harry Potter ride, but it's just a corridor that just bypasses all the cool stuff and gets you right to the front of the line. So most of the Harry Potter rides will not do that. They'll actually have some pretty cool theming for you to see, and you might get a different experience than if you went through the regular queue. So if you come in the morning to these Harry Potter areas, it's going to be a little bit less crowded. I mean, there's still a lot of people here, and if you go into any of the stores, it's more than likely going to be a little crazy. But this is not nearly as packed as it is when it's really, really bad. So coming in the morning is definitely a good call, or coming really late. This area is really, really pretty late at night. Everything's kind of reflective. For contrast, this is what you can expect at about 3 in the afternoon on a Sunday. This is actually probably a little light. All of the stores and everything are really, really packed and would be really hard to get in there as a big person. So I usually try and avoid it at this time of day. And that dragon up there, it does shoot fire, but it doesn't do it on any kind of schedule. So if you hear the dragon growling, or you hear like a loud rumbling, you want to pay attention to that dragon, because it's going to breathe fire, but it kind of does it whenever it wants to. If you're a Harry Potter fan, even if you don't eat at any of the restaurants, it's definitely worth it to stick your head inside and look at the decor, because it's some pretty amazing stuff. If you're any kind of Harry Potter aficionado, it's definitely worth at least stepping in and taking a look. Again, if you get the chance, you definitely want to check out the interior of these restaurants in both of the Harry Potter worlds. This is the 3 broomsticks, and it is really quite impressive inside of here. The theming is really good. Definitely feels like you're walking into the world of Harry Potter. So check it out if you ride the Hogwarts Express. You definitely want to check out both ends of the Hogwarts Express, just because it'll definitely immerse you into that world. Tip number 9 is definitely bring a lanyard with so you can put your pass or your ticket inside this lanyard, and make sure it has some sort of quick release on it so that you can, if you have it around your neck, you can easily pop it off and use it, because different things like lockers, you have to scan your barcode on your ticket to be able to check in and out of lockers. And if you put your ticket inside of your wallet, or you put it in your purse, or you put it in your pocket, you have a better chance of either locking it in a locker or dropping it somewhere. So definitely get a lanyard ahead of time. Don't buy them here at the parks unless you really want a souvenir lanyard, because they're pretty expensive here in the parks, and I definitely don't recommend them. I go to conventions all the time and they give me lanyards, board game conventions all the time and they give me lanyards there, so I just use those. Definitely a lanyard is the way to go when you're visiting parks. Tip number 10 is bring some Ziploc gallon-sized bags with you into the parks, especially for things like your sunscreen or anything that if it's in your bag and it gets smashed into a locker, it could leak and ooze all over your stuff. You really don't want that to happen, especially if you're excited to get on a ride and you're just jamming your bag into the little tiny locker. You will thank yourself if you have your sunscreen and everything inside of a little Ziploc bag. But don't just bring the one with that stuff in it. Bring some empties just in case you ride a water ride and you have a wet poncho or you have wet clothes. You can either put the stuff you want to keep dry inside of there, or you can put the stuff that's wet in there and not have to have it get everything else in your bag wet. So these are invaluable. I usually bring like 2 or 3 of these with me just in case. So yeah. Definitely want to bring some Ziploc bags. So tip number 11 is, if you're really excited for any particular part of the park, like if you're a Jurassic Park fan, or for whatever part of any park, always do your homework and find out if that part of the park is being refurbished at the time that you want to go. It might make more sense for you to wait for when the refurbishment is done and the part of the park reopens, just so you have the best experience possible. I mean, I'm not the biggest Jurassic World fan, but once the Jurassic World area is open, this used to be the Jurassic Park area, so now they're retheming it for the newer movies. It'll be pretty cool, but if I was really a diehard fan and I was coming from really far away, I might just want to wait to have this open so that I can experience it and not just walk through, see a whole bunch of gray walls and be disappointed. So definitely do your research and find out whether everything that you want to see is going to be open before you start planning your trip. Otherwise, if you can't help it and you have to be here while that's not open, just be aware that it might not be open, it might not be ready, so that you're not disappointed when you come to it and it's just a whole bunch of construction walls. Not that entertaining. Tip number 12 is, when you're on a ride like Jurassic Park River Adventure or The Simpsons 3D and it's bench style seating, a lot of the times the lap bar will just be one bar that comes down across everybody's laps. Now, if you are sitting with people you don't know and they have smaller riders like little kids, the parents, yeah, I didn't get wet that time. The parents might try and pull down on the bar because they feel like their kid is not very well restrained, because the bar is hitting you and is not going down far enough. So you might ask the ride attendant if you can be seated in a row that's just all adults, so there are no little kids. Now, the little kids would be completely safe if you rode with them, but it's kind of difficult to talk to a angry mother when she's trying to get the bar to secure her child and herself, and you're holding the bar up with your stomach. It's easier to just avoid that. I got a little wet that time. Sometimes, especially since a lot of people come here from other countries, there might be a language barrier when somebody is sitting with you, so it is usually a good idea to try and avoid that situation whenever possible, just by asking to be sat in a row that's only adults, or if there's a little small child in your row, be asked to be seated in a different row. And as always, if you're a big and tall person like me, you're not going to fit on every single ride, and if you try and fit on a ride and you have to make an early exit, don't let it ruin your day, okay? There are so many fun things to do here at Universal, from character meet and greets to food to shows. and there are several rides here that are big and tall friendly, and some that even have a modified seat that you can wait for that you wouldn't be able to fit in a normal seat, but they have a seat that's specifically made for people with long legs or larger stomachs. So definitely, if there's a ride that you are interested in trying and you have to make an early exit, before you leave the queue, ask if there's a modified seat for that ride, because you might not have to leave. You might be able to ride it, you might just have to wait for that modified seat to come around. The best thing you can do to try and mitigate this problem is what you're already doing. Research ahead, look into the rides that you want to ride and see if you can fit on them, okay? On my channel, I have a lot of ride review videos that will cover the seats, and you can even see a measurements video that has all my measurements that you can use to kind of gauge yourself against my body type and see if you think that you could fit in these rides before you even get in the queue. Okay? Especially if they don't have a test seat, knowing what to expect when you get to the end of the queue is actually a big part of making sure that you have as good a day as you possibly can here at Universal as a big and tall rider. Okay? So a little bit of information will go a long, long way when you're planning a trip to come to Universal, so always do your homework. And well, that's all the tips I have for you today. So thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. If you didn't like it, you can feel free to give it a thumbs down. It definitely tells me if I did a good job or not. Again, my name is Dave, and thank you for watching Parks in Your Pocket. I'll see you again real soon. There's like 10 square feet that they could be in the park to be in my shot, and they get right in my shot.